going to be joined by Fiona Lali. For those of you who don't know her, I'm sure most of you does. She ran as an independent candidate in the last general elections. She is also the campaigns coordinator for the Revolutionary Communist Party. And she will try to talk and focus our thoughts on how to organize in order to face our current government. Please welcome Fiona Lali.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. I was here a couple of months ago, the day of the US election, to protest the US election and to make the point that we knew, no matter what happened on that day, the fundamental cause of the Palestinians would not change, because what we're fighting for was not just immediately a ceasefire, but an end to the occupation as a whole, an end to the role of Israeli imperialism, which is backed by Western imperialism, the most powerful, reactionary, dominant force in the world today, and that hasn't changed just a few months later. But what I want to focus on is how we use that in the next period. First of all, we have to recognize the destruction and the devastation that's taken place in Gaza over the last 15 months. It's so vast, it's almost indescribable. People have already pointed out the death toll of 46,000, which we know is truly much higher, hundreds of thousands more injured, millions displaced. But all of the infrastructure in Gaza, the hospitals, the schools, the sewage, everything that you need to live any kind of life has been completely destroyed, and we can't lose that when we try and understand the depth and the scale of this devastation. And not just in Gaza. You know, Israel tried to spread that devastation throughout the entirety of the region, and that hasn't changed, and the death and destruction that they tried to do in Lebanon and elsewhere remains. And our point here, outside of the US Embassy, is that none of this would have been possible without the support of the West. Israel, as an entity, does not last without the support, the facilitation, the political support, the financial support, the military support of the West and Western imperialism, which begins with the US but then spreads throughout Europe and elsewhere. And that is why the movement in the West has been so strong and has been so powerful. Because it's our duty, historically, for the West, the ruling class of the West, and their role in the creation of Israel and propping it up, but also today, not just complicit, but active participants in a genocide. That is what has been taking place.
Yes.
And when we were here a couple of months ago to protest the day of the election, I spent a lot of time talking about Kamala Harris and the Democrats. And there were a lot of people saying, why are you focusing on the Democrats so much? You know, weren't they the lesser evil? And that has been proven to be categorically false in every single sense.
Yes.
It was all of those so-called liberal politicians who have actually proven themselves to be the epicenter of reactionary politics. It is all of those so-called liberal politicians in the West that have proven themselves to be the heart of barbarism, the heart of the most barbaric policies and weapons and support throughout the world. So there is one thing that we are seeing at the moment which is positive, which is the shattering of the falsity that liberalism is in somehow a progressive politics for the world. It's completely wrapped up in imperialism and the capitalist system. And what people have taken from the Palestine movement and the movement of the Palestinians is the need for a revolutionary politics. There is no reformist way out of an occupation. Yes. There is no reformist way out of imperialism. There is only the revolutionary road and the revolutionary struggle, and that has been spread all throughout the world. The other thing that I think gives us a bit of optimism and hope for this current moment is there's no way for the British government and for Keir Starmer to try and put all of this behind him. And what do I mean by that? I think the intense police repression that we saw on Saturday is a message. They're trying to say, okay, this is over now and you have to stop. And they think that everything can go back to the way that it was before. But it can't. Everything has changed. And right now, the Palestinian struggle, it has redefined politics. In so many ways, it has politicized and awoken a whole layer of people all over the world. But in this country too, hundreds of thousands of people who have taken to the streets about Palestine, yes, but I think it's also been about so much more than that. You know, this really beautiful phrase that people have been using, this phrase that, you know, Gaza is the soul of my soul, right? Gaza is the center of the universe. And I've been thinking about that, you know, why that speaks to people, or why the Palestinian struggle as a whole speaks to people, whether you're religious or not, or anything like this. There is just the abject horror that moves people. But it's also being transformed into something bigger about what kind of world do we want to live in as a whole. Like, all of the oppressed can see themselves in the Palestinian struggle. Why can we see all of our children in the children of Gaza? It is in part due to the unending spirit, the unending struggle that never seems to stop. But also because it's exposed so clearly the naked truth of what imperialism is, and what Western imperialism is, and the falsity of the international rules-based order or anything like this. It has exposed Keir Starmer and David Lammy and every single British politician who has lied after lie after lie after lie, hypocrisy after hypocrisy, and they can't undo any of that. And that is why they've been so repressive on the demos, is because they're hoping to go back to the 6th of October, but there is no such thing, and we won't let them. It's not just that we won't let them forget about Palestine. It's not just that we want more than a ceasefire but an end to the occupation. It's that the whole of the movement has hardened us after a year of struggle. But we know nothing less than a revolution is the solution in Palestine, but all over the world as well. You know, sometimes there's a fear that if you take a cause beyond its immediate people or beyond its immediate demand, that somehow you're going to weaken it. But it's precisely the opposite. It's precisely the opposite. Once you connect any cause or struggle or people with the rest of the world and the rest of their struggles, you strengthen it to a power that no court, no army, no police force, nothing can stop. You know, we say, I'm a communist, I believe in the struggle of the working class and the oppressed all over the world. And I believe so strongly that there is nothing more powerful than the collective power of the masses when they come together. And that is what the last year has given us a glimpse into. Okay, we haven't had revolutions all over the world. Okay, there hasn't been a revolution in Britain yet. But what I would say is the breeding ground for all of that has been prepared. It has been prepared by the last year in Palestine and all over the world. And that is what people have learned from it, which is a really powerful thing. And Keir Starmer can't backtrack that. He can't take it back. So I think what we need to do now is think about how to take the best lessons from the last year. Think about this encampment, the university encampments, when people have organised in their workplace, when people have organised in the schools, in their communities. All of that is something that can grow and grow, and you have a whole generation of young people, of people from all ages and all backgrounds, who see the media, who see the government, who see Starmer, who see all these politicians as part of a global class that produces misery everywhere. Throughout the Palestine movement, one thing that I've argued is that the best way to connect it is connect what Starmer's role is in Palestine to his role here, in austerity, in worsening the living standards of all people and all of the oppressed. And the last year has proven that there are enough people out there who have that anger and who could be mobilised and could be organised. But our job now is to take that strength and to take it one step further. And I want to end on this point because there's a huge vacuum opening up in Britain right now, right? Trump has just been elected, and clearly Nigel Farage and many politicians across Europe are going to follow the Trump agenda and use his politics and use his demagoguery and use his anti-establishment appeal as a way to build a movement. But we know that the real anti-establishment feeling could be mobilised towards our politics in a revolutionary direction. And so it's our job to make sure that Nigel Farage, whether it's Nigel Farage or the Tories or anyone, does not take up this space. What is real anti-establishment politics? Yes, we can be against the rich, but with an actual alternative. And this is the other thing that I want to say. We talk about the destruction that has been caused in Gaza. If we could overthrow, if we could get get rid of Keir Starmer, and not just Starmer but Farage and all of the right wing and their politics, which actually is about maintaining the system, maintaining a capitalist system that produces misery all over the world. Think about what a government of workers could do for the Palestinians, a genuine government that would help to rebuild Gaza. Because the question is not just an end to the immediate suffering, but to prevent the ongoing suffering, the trauma, the health problems, the pollution in the air that exists because of the rubble and everything. So what we are fighting for is to help the Palestinian people, and the best way to do that is by fighting to overthrow our own rotten imperialists in this country, in Britain and in America. Because the ceasefire deal, the terms that they have, were the same terms from May. Everything that has happened since then has been totally unnecessary, which shows the cynicism of these people in power. So we are opposed to them for the abject horror and misery that they cause for the Palestinians, but because we can connect it with the abject horror that they produce every single day in this country, every single attack on the living standards. We have to connect it all together, and I really truly believe that the hundreds of thousands of people who've been mobilised on the issue of Palestine could be mobilised in a conscious way against Starmer, against what he represents, which is imperialism and which is capitalism, which right now is one of its deepest ever crises. It's one of its weakest moments, but it's not a guarantee. There's this huge vacuum. So we should take strength from the movements we have, the connections we have here together, build upon them in our schools, our workplaces, our universities, to build a conscious movement against Starmer, against imperialism, against Zionism, and ultimately against capitalism. And it's on that basis